But
Do
are we
you
going
regret
down
not covering? Do you regret not covering the Warriors the last few years? Not in the sorry, not in the sense of I know you do not miss the day-to-day grind and you've graduated beyond that and it's not worth it. But like, does part of you miss not being able to complete the story on this team? Because I don't want to.
Great question. It's a great question.
Overly compliment you because I know how big your head is, but I think you.
It's filling up.
I think you're a very important part of like framing what we were watching and telling the story of the Warriors. Let's call it 2013, like late Mark Jackson through everyone tearing their ligaments in 2019.
Yeah. It's one of these things where I certainly miss aspects of it, but I don't want the totality. And that's really what it comes down to. But I miss it. I miss the energy. There's just nothing like the energy of a big playoff game that you're covering, that you're going in there, especially when it's on the road too. On the road, it feels like your team that you're covering, your team, like you're rooting for them. Maybe a little bit. It does work out better for you as they win.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's
a little bit. But it feels like you're covering this team and they're the invading army and they're trying to sack a city and it's intense and there's just nothing like it. And the Warriors were almost this Mongol storm blowing through where just the way people reacted to it. But, you know, the in-between with the Warriors has been a slog. We're going to edit it out in our memories like we forget about the pandemic.
Yes.
We're not going to talk about the in-between. If they win this championship, we're going to talk about what happened with the Warriors as though it was continuous, right? Where, like, and then Steph won in 2022, and then he won in 2025. And then what happened between then?
2020, because James Wiseman just gets edited out now. Like, that draft pick just gets edited out because 2022 happened. Like,
it's a pandemic. No one could control it. The only thing that could stop the Warriors was a global pandemic, you know, like that sort of thing.
Yeah. And, you know, I wouldn't have wanted to grind, to be on the grind and to be in all of the months in between. But yeah, there is a part of me that feels connected. And I was watching a little bit of the Andre jersey ceremony and feeling a little bit, man, that was my life. That was crazy. And it feels almost wrong not to be there.
Do you have a group economics jersey on?
I did not have a did Andre. Oh boy. But no, I don't. Leaving the beat when I left it was one of the best decisions. It wasn't the beat, but covering the Warriors when I left it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But yeah, every now and again I feel pulled in, and right now that's one of these times. If there was actually parking at Chase, I would feel it even more. But yeah.
I have a controversial question for you. Could you cover the Warriors today the way you covered them? Even like honestly, you covered them 7 years ago at this point, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you even do that? I'm just how much the media landscape has changed. Oh. Yeah, I'm saying this from the standpoint of the Warriors have gone through a reasonable amount of drama the last few years, for better or worse. And they went through drama when you covered them, but you had whether it was the balls to ask the question or the media climate still allowed someone who had the temerity and the balls to do it, to say that stuff. And does that still exist?
I think it's one of these. I don't know if it's the balls.
Ethan, do you still have the balls?
To do it? I don't know if it's the balls, but it's you have to know where you've got to know where you fit in sometimes. And I'm actually, maybe I'm a little bit disagreeable, but I'm sensitive too. And I don't like when people are mad at me. And I don't like when I'm getting friction, but I would sometimes face these situations and I would have to tell myself, you're not a newsbreaker. You're not a newsbreaker. So what are you doing here? If you're sitting on this, if there's something right now that everybody kind of knows and everybody kind of notices, like Kevin Durant's going to leave the Warriors, but nobody is saying it, and you're not saying it, well, you know, I think that we would have worked in concert to a degree. But you've got to understand that if you're the fullback on the football team and you go, well, I don't really like contact. Well, what are you really doing here? What's really the point? So I think maybe if I was a newsbreaker, I was one of these sorts of people, maybe it'd be something that I would shy away from, but I would ultimately have to cover them in the way that I covered them and deal with all of the bullshit that came from it. And maybe that informs why I eventually quit, because it's some drama, man. I don't want to tell tales out of school, but a few years ago, I'm going to give it a wrong presentation of my life. I've gone skiing maybe once. Crash course, pardon the pun, with Nate Duncan, really. With Nate Duncan in a weekend teaching me how to ski in his very didactic and brilliantly effective way. And Slater was there. And I don't want to get into the details of it, but there was some story that he was covering that was blowing up, and there was all this drama. And he was just fielding phone calls from different people in the organization. And he was doing a great job, very professional. But I just saw how beleaguered he was. This guy who had my old life almost and was doing a fantastic job. But it's all that behind the scenes stuff, man. It wasn't North Star.
At the bar?
Although I've golfed at North Star. I sound so rich right now in this podcast. Although North Star's not that great, of course. That makes me sound rich.
Yeah.
That makes me sound rich to know that. What am I doing? You'd be more of a man of the people. But and what I'm saying is that behind the scenes aspect, if you want to know why NBA media coverage is soft and perhaps dishonest, it's getting a flavor of it when Bob, again, love you, Bob. But when you're just talking about how the Nico trade, let's wait and see, before you judge. It's just, come on, can we be real? Can we be honest? It's because it's this hyper-connected, insular world, and you put something out there, it's interesting. You've got, depending on what you do, depending on what you say, love you, Raymond Ritter, Warriors PR head honcho. Raymond's going to call you. Raymond's going to be agitated about what you did.
Second person Andre Iguodala thanked during his jersey retirement, by the way.
Love Raymond. Love Raymond. Last time I was in the building, Raymond could not have been more gracious to me, but there were times where Raymond would call me up because he didn't like what I did, and that's a conversation. The agent can be just... Agents have so much power and leverage, and they're often not nice people. They're jumping down your throat. And then you've got the players, you go in the locker room, they're at you. And then the social media, it's just everything is just coming at you in this way that I think a lot of people don't want to deal with, versus back in the day where there just wasn't as much communication. Maybe you'd kill a guy and go on a road trip for 2 weeks, and you wouldn't even find out till he came back and read it in the newspaper. So I think people just they hear footsteps. They hear footsteps everywhere, and it's just not worth it. It's better to leave it to guys like you. And it's just uncomfortable.
You had an article. I just pulled it up a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, with our faces on it. Me, loyal subscriber, saw a picture of myself, said, "Oh man,
yes, I like you bringing this up. I like this."
And the reason I'm bringing it up is because what you're talking about is Warriors Twitter too negative, and the reason why I enjoy, not at all, not anymore.
Validated.
Twitter fingers, Andy.
Not anymore. I bring this up because I used to be at the games all the time. Now I'm not reporting on shit like Ethan, but I'd at least have to see Steve Kerr and Steph and be in the locker room, ask questions. And ever since I stopped, I'm so happy because I get to go on the podcast and I get to say whatever the fuck I want, right? I can say somebody had a bad game and not worry about anything. I can write, I can tweet. Really, the big thing is I get to tweet whatever I want. Now I get to say anything I want online. And if they get mad, that's fine. Now, again, I'm not you, Ethan, right? I'm just the guy that's talking, but I don't have to worry about that. And so what's happened in the last couple of years, and I think for people that don't follow the Warriors really intently, is that a lot of stuff that the Warriors were doing did require criticism, right? It's like, why are we doing the 2 timeline stuff? Why aren't you trying to trade for guys? Why are you holding on to guys? And I think that became a very because every game, remember you said every game's a slog? Every game was the same conversation. Sam and I sat here and we did 100 podcasts in 100 days, and we talked about the exact. Do you know how many times we talked about?
I thought so hard about posting like a pod from 3 weeks ago and telling people it was a new episode. Just
You're like Keanu Reeves in Speed, just having the camera play on loop with the Wildcat.
And so when it came down to what I think this trade deadline became hey, either we do something or this is just, it's kind of over. It finally got to that point. And they did something and it worked. And that, I think, to your point, is to what you're saying, is we do feel validated because it's like, you guys did something, which is something we've been asking for years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like you did anything crazy. You traded Wiggins, who is awesome, won him a championship, and a fucking pick. That's it. You guys didn't trade anything. You guys actually didn't even trade Kuminga. You guys didn't trade Pajemski. You're still on team. You guys didn't trade a 2027 first, right? So it was actually a low risk move outside of Joe Lacob's got to pay some more money. And, Joe's good for that. So
hey, man, I was airing some criticism of you from my subscribers and submitting to the idea that the Warriors were just boned and there was no move to make. Then I started hearing these rumors that they were going to get Jimmy. And look, whatever happens from here, this was the thing to do. Something needed to happen.